Good evening and welcome to the Planning Commission meeting for Lake Stevens, Washington, January 21st, 2026, our first meeting of the new year. Happy New Year, my fellow commissioners and staff. I am Chair Huxford, and I'd ask you each to stand with me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you so much. And before we go to roll call, we are going to take a moment and have Caitlin come online. And we are going to announce and appoint our newest two commissioners. So if I could turn the time over to Caitlin.
Good evening, Planning Commission. This is Deputy Clerk Caitlin Weaver, and I'm here to do the oaths for our two new planning commissioners. Very exciting. So if you'd like to raise your right hand, we'll go ahead and do your oath together. Okay.
Should we stand?
I mean, you can if you want to. Yeah. Go ahead. Okay. I state your name.
I, Amy Lewandowski,
Do solemnly swear or affirm
do solemnly swear or affirm
that I will support the Constitution
that I will support the Constitution
and laws of the United States
and laws of the United States
and state of Washington
and state of Washington
and the ordinances of the city of Lake Stevens,
and the ordinance of the city of Lake Stevens,
and that I will faithfully and impartially
and I will faithfully and impartially
perform and discharge the duties
perform and discharge the duties
of Planning Commissioner
of Planning Commissioner
according to the law
according to the law
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
and to the best of my ability and understanding.
All right, congratulations.
Thank you.
Yay!
Thank you. Welcome. And with that, it is my pleasure to do the first roll call. Commissioner Dewar,
Here.
Commissioner Morton,
Here.
Commissioner Lewandowski,
Here.
Commissioner Connor Davis,
Here.
Commissioner James, and I don't know your last name off the top of my head, Sauls. Exactly, Commissioner
Here.
Sauls. And Commissioner Jennifer Davis. Here. And again, Janice Huxford, I am here. We are a full commission. Thank you so much. I wanted to, before we get into guest business, have a moment with our newest commissioners to introduce themselves. Maybe if you take a minute or so to talk about what brought you to us. We would love to get to know you as we will be serving alongside you. Commissioner Sauls, can we begin with you, please?
Absolutely. Thank you, Chair. As mentioned, my name is James Sauls. I am originally from North Carolina. My family and I moved out here, it'll be 5 years in July. I've worked in and out of local government for the last 15 to 20 years. It's kind of blurry at this point. Currently work for the city of Everett in the transportation department. I wanted to be on the planning commission because we honestly love Lake Stevens. And I hope to bring some of my past skills and stuff that I'm going to learn with other commissioners and with Lake Stevens staff to continue to make Lake Stevens the great place that it is. So thank you for having me.
Awesome. We appreciate that. And Commissioner Lewandowski.
Great. Yep. Amy Lewandowski. My husband and I moved here about 10 years ago from Everett, and we have two kids, Jordan and Grace. Jordan is at Cavallero Mid-High and Grace is at North Lake Middle School. I volunteered in a lot of different capacities, county-wide as well as in this city. So I'm on the board of the Everett YMCA, really active as a Rotarian. And we love Lake Stevens. We have loved raising our kids here. I enjoy all of the connections and the community and getting to know our neighbors. And I'm kind of learning my way up, so to speak, as I'm involved and just want to learn more.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you having here. And I will add that I was on the panel that helped to interview these folks. We had some really good candidates. Any one of the candidates that applied could have fit beautifully. And what we looked for was what the commission needed. So these two candidates will fill holes that we had, and I think will it will be advantageous for us to have them on our commission moving forward. So thank you for applying, and we look forward to working with you.
Thank you.
Let's move on to guest business. This is the opportunity for anybody in the audience or online to address anything that is not on the agenda for this evening. Are there any comments that want to be made from the podium? Hearing none, is there anything online?
No.
Okay, let's move on then to our action items. This is item number 4. 4A is the approval of our minutes, which seems like a long time ago. This was our December 3rd meeting. For those of you that were part of that meeting, have you had the opportunity to review those minutes, and are there any changes that you'd like to make?
I move that we accept the minutes from the December 3rd, 2025 meeting.
And that was Commissioner Connor Davis that made the motion. Do we have a second?
Morton seconds.
Commissioner Morton will second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstain? So the minutes are approved as written for December 3rd. Now we're moving on to 4B, which is our election of our 2026 officers. As you all know, we elect both a chair and a vice every year. It is something that we do to make sure that we keep things not as a monopoly. And also because I'm losing my voice already, so this night's going to be quick for me. Do we have any nominations for chair?
Commissioner Connor Davis nominates Bruce Morton as chair, Planning Commission.
Thank you. Do we have any other nominations?
Please.
This is Commissioner Jennifer Davis, and I'd like to nominate Commissioner Dewar as vice chair, if you'd like to accept the nomination.
Do we have any other motions for chair?
Oh, just chair. Okay.
Yes. I'd actually like to, because I like to have a choice. I'll nominate, if accepted, Commissioner Dewar as chair. And then we will have an option.
Oh, there you go.
Any other nominations? Okay, then we will by hand. Do we have, will the commission raise by hand?
Should we make a statement?
Would you like to make a statement? In-
Sure. Sure.
I'd love to hear a statement.
Okay. So I've been on the commission for a couple of years now, and it seems like it's my turn. And I have not had a nice refresher of the Robert's rules that we had a couple weeks ago. I really appreciate that. And I've had y'all as examples, and so I would be happy to be chair. And thank you for the nominations.
Thank you. Commissioner Dewar, would you like to add anything?
Well, I appreciate the nomination for one. I think, as you all know, I've been a chair in the past. And just from, my position, I think any one of us would be wonderful selections for this. If elected, I would be happy to once again take on that role.
And I think that the duo of the two of you would be brilliant in either capacity. So can we vote on chair and then vote on whoever is not chair to be vice?
Sure.
We can make a nomination for that vice so that it's official, but I love the duo. All right. So both have been nominated. All those in favor of having Commissioner Morton as chair, raise your right hand. Anybody that chooses Commissioner Dewar? Commissioner Morton, congratulations.
Thank you.
Do I have a nomination for Commissioner Dewar as vice? You already did, Commissioner Jennifer Davis. We will second with Commissioner Connor Davis. And just to be official, everybody that wants you to raise your right hand. I love it. And I will turn the microphone over to you, Bruce Morton. Let's not switch seats,
No.
but if you would please take over for the rest of the meeting.
Sure.
Would you like an agenda?
I have an agenda. It's on the PDF, so I'll just
Okay.
do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you so much, Janice, for your wonderful service as chair for the last year.
My pleasure.
That's been many times for you. And so, all right, so let's move on to the agenda. We've already done action item 4A and 4B. Let's move on to the critical areas update. So Planner Levitan, please take it from here.
All right. Thank you, Chair Morton. Commissioners, David Levitan, Principal Planner. So we are back this evening to talk about the Critical Areas Ordinance update. It's something that we haven't talked about for a few months now. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the project and then just touch on a couple of the more prominent revisions to the chapter. But happy to answer any additional questions, especially for the newer commissioners, whether it's about specific language or whether it's about just the general role or requirements of our critical areas ordinance. Happy to touch on any of that. So just a little bit of an overview. So cities in state of Washington are required to basically implement the Growth Management Act through their critical areas ordinance, basically to address all of the different critical areas that are outlined within the WAC, the Washington Administrative Code, and then the RCW, the Revised Code of Washington. So the ordinance is basically an implementation task. It typically follows the completion of your comprehensive plan periodic update. You then move on to your implementing ordinances, such as your critical areas ordinance, and you do what's called a periodic update of that as well. It's mandated by the state. We're running a little bit behind on that. The deadline was officially December 31st, but a number of cities, just given the amount of different regulations and different code amendments that we've needed to do over the past couple of years, are running a little bit behind. So we're still in a pretty good spot there. Kind of one of the major items and one of the main drivers is basically aligning the local regulations with state requirements and then with what's called best available science. Basically, you need to have a strong technical scientific foundation in your regulations, and you need to demonstrate that before you just put them into place as far as implementing ordinance language. Just a little bit of clarification, especially for those that are new to this. Things like the Lake Stevens, shorelines of the state, they are subject to their own critical areas regulations, which are incorporated into the Shoreline Master Program. So when it comes to things like buffers for Lake Stevens or for Little Pilchuck or for Catherine Creek, those are not being addressed through this project. Those will be addressed through the next periodic update to the Shoreline Master Program. And then just in general, when we're doing either land use applications or building permit review, they're required to demonstrate compliance with Chapter 1488, which is our local ordinance. And then when it comes to submitting, especially for periodic updates, we work collaboratively with the Department of Commerce, Department of Ecology. We solicit feedback from the Department of Fish and Wildlife, as well as from other local agencies and from local tribes, to make sure that we're getting kind of a holistic set of comments and set of input in developing these regulations. So just a really quick overview on the 5 types of critical areas. So we have wetlands, fish and wildlife, habitat conservation areas, which are primarily streams, and then the adjacent kind of riparian corridors. Critical aquifer recharge areas, which is one of the major additions for this year. That is, per state law, it's a type of critical area. It's not, we do not currently have that within Chapter 1488. So we're needing to develop new regulations, new maps, basically demonstrating where they are and how we are going to regulate their use, basically uses that coincide with these aquifer recharge areas. And they're basically areas with a recharging effect for groundwater. And so they're susceptible to contamination. You need to make sure that your allowed uses as well as your development standards result essentially that you're not adversely impacting these areas. So that's kind of one of the major lifts of this update, was actually adopting that language. And so we have some draft language in attachment 1. Geologically hazardous areas, so steep slopes and other items, and then frequently flooded areas. So just a little bit about Chapter 1488. Our last major update was adopted back in 2019. That was now 7 years ago. And really when you look at the best available science and you look at where the regulations are, especially for things like wetlands, we're still almost entirely within compliance with just a couple of exceptions, which are the areas of focus for this evening and really what we've been focusing on with this update. Wetland buffers, a bunch of other areas, we're already meeting best available science. So this is a relatively limited update that's just focused on a few specific areas. As noted, we have 4 of the 5 required critical areas that are currently within the code, and we've developed draft language for critical aquifer recharge areas. And then this chapter, covers a lot of things, but, buffers, which is basically the additional areas beyond the delineated critical areas, allowed activities, mitigation requirements, and just a whole slew of other items that's covered in Chapter 1488. So I'm just going to highlight a couple of the major changes that are included within the packet, and happy to answer any questions related to these or any other items. But one of the areas that we did need to update to be consistent with best available science was our stream buffers. So basically the areas that extend beyond the stream channel. And so we currently have a 50-foot buffer for what are called type NP, which are perennial streams, type NS, which are seasonal streams. So those currently have a 50-foot buffer. Type F streams, which are fish-bearing streams that are not shorelines of the state, or type S streams, those currently have a 100-foot buffer. And then the type S streams, which are not subject to this update, that will be potentially updated with the next SMP Shoreline Master Program update, have a 150-foot buffer. So basically the best available science that has come out in recent years has shown that there needs to be at least a 100-foot buffer for all stream types. And so when you look at that table 1488-1, we are aligning our regulations with that best available science, basically bumping up the perennial and seasonal streams from 50 feet to 100 feet, and the fish-bearing streams up to 150 feet to account for the presence of fish, that they need a slightly larger buffer area. The type F stream would then be consistent with the type S or shoreline of the state streams. And for those of you that for the non-new commissioners, we had a discussion a few months ago now about this concept of site potential tree height. The initial recommendation from the Department of Fish and Wildlife was basically to adopt essentially a riparian management zone along your stream corridors. That would, the width of those would correspond with the maximum potential tree height of species of trees that are either native or can live within those areas. In Lake Stevens, that would have resulted in buffers between 200 and 250 feet for pretty much all of our streams. About 85 to 90% of our streams would have been subject. So it would have, in some areas, quadrupled or almost quintupled them for some of the perennial and seasonal streams. We've since had conversations with our consultants, preliminary conversations with Fish and Wildlife, and looked at ordinances that have been adopted for other jurisdictions within Snohomish County. And this approach to have the 100 feet for the perennial and seasonal streams and 150 feet for the fish-bearing streams has been found to be consistent with best available science and alternative approach to riparian management. And so we think we're in a pretty good spot there. The other kind of major update as part of this critical areas ordinance update is adopting new regulations for our critical aquifer recharge areas, or CARAs. That's included on pages 40 to 45 of the packet. Is basically a whole new section that basically goes in the place of a since repealed section of 1488. So there's a variety of items within this section of Chapter 1488. It includes designation, mapping, and rating requirements for CARAs. So CARAs are basically, these areas with a recharging effect. There's concepts such as travel zones. So when you're dealing with groundwater, basically you need to account for how that groundwater travels, and you need to be able to regulate and manage your uses within that area, so that if you say have an industrial use that has the potential for contamination, and you have either a sole source aquifer or some other type of aquifer recharge area, you want to make sure that your regulations are aligned so that you don't have the potential adverse environmental impacts related to, say, spills or something along those lines. And so you want to make sure that you're managing uses, that you're establishing performance standards that are consistent with best available science. And so that's what that the pages 40 to 45 of the packet are basically developing those recommended regulations there within the CARA section. It includes also a list of prohibited and regulated uses, and then also specific critical area report requirements when you have a potential impact on a CARA. So that just includes a map there in the upper right of just some of the wellhead protection areas. That could be sole source aquifers, it could be private wells, community wells, basically need to establish kind of a hierarchy of how you regulate within these different CARAs and these wellhead protection areas, and then what appropriate performance standards and permissible uses are within there. So there are a number of other minor changes, such as updated and new definitions, really making sure that we're emphasizing when you're dealing with critical areas, obviously avoidance. There's what's called mitigation sequencing and establishing a hierarchy on how you should be dealing with critical areas. Obviously, at the top of the food chain is avoidance. If you can avoid a critical area, it's best to avoid it so that you don't have impacts on the critical area, its buffer. Then you have minimization. Then you have potential mitigation. So just, throughout the document, we just kind of sprinkled it in here and there, just making sure that we're emphasizing that. As I'll go into on kind of the last slide, is we still have some work to do on the chapter overall. Given that there are 5 different types of critical areas, we still have a good amount of redundancy within each subsection that kind of repeats a lot of the same language. So the changes that we proposed to date that are shown in attachment 1 have really focused on the technical components. We still need to go back in and restructure the chapter a little bit, and that's what we're going to be working on in the coming weeks before we make this available for public review. We want to strip out a lot of that redundancy, basically create kind of one section at the beginning that spells it out that this applies to every type of critical area, so you don't have to repeat these things in each individual section. So that's some things that we still need to do. But as far as some of the other minor changes that are reflected in attachment 1, wanted to make sure that we clarified submittal requirements when a project is subject to Chapter 1488. Simplifying and streamlining references to state law and definitions so that every time there's a minor tweak at the RCW or WAC level, we don't have to go in and make the change locally. It's a lot easier just to reference those sections. And then there were a couple other items besides the stream buffers. One of the other areas that we needed to update to reflect best available science was on wetland mitigation ratios. Primarily on the preservation side, we didn't have a preservation ratio, which is still kind of an interesting concept as far as creating a ratio for something that you're just essentially preserving. But this is something that's, spelled out at the state level. And so we're trying to align our local regulations with that. So as I noted, kind of the major item that we still need to do is really restructure it, kind of establish one set of general provisions at the beginning of the document so that we can eliminate a lot of that redundancy. I had included a reference in the staff report, the concept of functionally disconnected buffers. So if you have a wetland and it's relatively close, but you have a long established road that basically splits that wetland from your development site, there's guidance at the state level, and then things that we can do at the local level through our critical areas ordinance that basically establishes how we deal with that, so that we're recognizing that if there is essentially a functional barrier that basically eliminates all buffer function, that it should be treated as such. So we're continuing to work on some of that language. Going to be working with commerce, ecology, fish and wildlife, local tribes, and the public to, once we have a review draft, to get that out, to get public comments on that. And been working on just some ways to take what can be a relatively dry topic or something that seems very technical in nature. One of our planners, Jill, has developed a really good introductory story map that's basically a combination of graphics and maps. We had done one for the comp plan update as well. If you all remember, we had created a story map for that where you can just kind of scroll down the page and it brings up different graphics and maps and just kind of very short blurbs of narratives so that you don't get overwhelmed by too much text. And so that's what we're going to be working on over the next couple of months in advance of public hearings later in the winter or early in the spring. We're going to go into a little bit more at your joint meeting with the city council as far as the role of the planning commission and the role of the city council. But for the new members, if you're not aware, this is a type 6 legislative amendment, so it requires a public hearing before both the planning commission and the city council. The planning commission holds their public hearing, makes a recommendation to the city council, and then the city council acts upon that recommendation before they hold their public hearing and then ultimately adopt the changes via city council ordinance. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions related to this or any other items that are included in the packet. Look forward to the discussion.
So commissioners, ask away. Go ahead.
Thank you. This is Commissioner Jennifer Davis. I had a question that involves the purpose and intent section, which I believe is on page 12 of the packet. And this has to do with the sequencing hierarchy, the mitigation sequencing hierarchy. There's a sixth component. So this would be subsection A6 that is going to be added, monitoring. And I was curious about that, but about who performs that task? What's the vision for the monitoring component?
So we have monitoring requirements that are included within Chapter 1488 as far as depending on the type of critical area and the classification and the rating as far as how long you need to do monitoring. So I'd have to look back through what the specific requirements are, but we typically have like a 3 to 5 year period. And so on the permitting side of things, we set up basically reminders within our permitting software that, hey, there's a monitoring report that is due. Say somebody had delineated a wetland and they were proposing to use buffer averaging and there was potential impacts to that wetland and they were required to do mitigation. We basically, through the permitting side of things for development proposals, they're required to prepare these monitoring reports. And so we just wanted to establish that and make that consistent with the best available science, is that you have all of your steps to avoid impacts, to minimize impacts, to mitigate impacts, and then you have to monitor impacts and the proposed mitigation to account for those impacts. So that's the thought process behind that monitoring component.
So Commissioner Dewar, just, in reading through this appears to be a good attempt to strike a balance between the kind of statutorial need for development versus, protections of wetlands. And one of the things that we keep coming back to is the concept of best available science. Who is the arbiter of what that is? And when we make a good faith effort to use that, what's to say that Department of Commerce might say, well, this is our best available science versus Fish and Wildlife, which may have something entirely different.
Yeah, so best available science is a concept. I mean, it encompasses a lot of different sources. I mean, there's typically for wetlands and streams and geologically hazardous areas, you'll get some general best available science from the pertinent or applicable state agencies. So whether that's DNR, whether that's Fish and Wildlife, whether that's ecology, basically who has the primary regulatory role in managing these critical areas, or at least establishing kind of the criteria at the state level and the regulations and standards at the state level. Basically what we need to do and what we did, what our consultants did was prepare a best available science document where they assess all of this different information, say, kind of try to synthesize it down to a relatively high level and say, this is how we're addressing, all of these different sources and, why we're proposing, a good example would be for the stream buffers is that, Fish and Wildlife came out with essentially a best available science document as far as why you should be adopting these riparian management zones based on site potential tree height, but it also did allow for cities to do alternative analysis. And so we've done that and worked with our consultants on that. So as long as you do your best available science analysis at the local level, which we'll have as a standalone technical document to kind of supplement this, is that you still need to get it reviewed by Commerce and you submit it to Ecology. But I think that we're in a pretty good spot as far as the best available science analysis that we've done for this project.
Thank you.
So this is Commissioner Morton. I have a few questions and comments. So when we first discussed this, you showed a map of how with the full buffers that Fish and Wildlife are suggesting, it would knock out massive chunks of the city with these super wide buffers. But still, I'm glad that it looks like we'll be able to get that reduced down or not increased as much as we feared. But even at that, with the expansion of these buffers, there's a lot of structures that are already inside those expanded buffers. And so how does this affect the current property owners that already have structures and such that are within these renewed buffers?
Yeah, so existing structures, and I mean, this is a good kind of educational opportunity for those that kind of haven't dealt with this. Would essentially, if they were legally built, they're vested to the regulations that were in place at the time of the construction. So if somebody built a house 50 years ago and it's 5 feet back from a stream, it would be considered conforming to our regulations because it would be what's called legal non-conforming. And so when you change your regulations and basically create a non-conforming situation, because they're vested, I mean, you're not bringing them out of compliance. They're just a little bit more limited in what they can do. So it's important to have within your regulations maintenance and, renovation and all sorts of different topics within there so that you can still get use of your property. If you have a 100-year-old house and it's 5 feet from a stream, your house, you're going to need to do maintenance to it. And so there's still going to be activities you generally allowed to remain within the existing building footprint or within the existing impervious surface footprint. So kind of the long and the short of it is that they would be considered legal non-conforming. There are certain things in maintenance that they can do. There is some language related to, say you had a complete foundation or you were wanting to do kind of a major renovation. As long as you're not expanding beyond that, you would typically be able to do that. We're just required to adopt local regulations for how we deal with non-conforming situations like that.
So it doesn't affect landscaping or yard work or things like that.
No, I mean, unless you're doing a certain amount of grading or other land disturbance within there where you may be subject to it. But if you have, say, an established lawn, mowing your lawn within there.
What about sheds?
If there's
Like
existing sheds or new?
What if I want to build a shed? What if someone who's in that buffer and they want to put a shed in their backyard?
I mean, if it's a new development, it would be subject, a new structure, it would be subject to the new regulations. If there was an existing shed, then it would essentially be, vested or grandfathered in. But if somebody's wanting to put something in new, then it would be subject unless there's some sort of exemption for, there are allowed activities, there are exemptions, but generally that doesn't apply to structures.
The other question I had, you pretty much answered it, and that was about, if you got a stream and you got a road and there's an empty piece of property on the other side, and now the expanded buffer now extends into that yard, which is physically separated from the stream by the road. It looks like you're already working on the language to clarify that expanded buffer does not include land on the other side of an existing separating barrier. Correct?
Yeah, and Russ Director Wright had prepared kind of a code interpretation last year addressing this, just, in advance of doing that. So we have most of that language that's kind of developed. We just need to incorporate it into this chapter. And I think I provided a hyperlink to the code interpretation within the staff report, but it addresses situations just like that. We've had development projects that have been graveled for 100 years and there's no, wetland vegetation, but directly adjacent to them, it might show, a wetland or a wetland buffer that comes into it, but it's basically lost all of its habitat and ecological function because it's been disturbed by gravel for so long or by a road. And so essentially you're establishing an effective buffer on a case-by-case basis when it comes to that. You're saying normally the buffer would be 100 feet or 150 feet, but because it's been permanently disturbed, the buffer essentially ends at the edge of the wetland boundary, basically.
Good. The other thing I have is not a question, more like a comment or a suggestion. So the Department of Fish and Wildlife has essentially taken urban land away from the city because they've expanded these buffers and when you brought it up on the map, it's a huge, if you added it all up, it's a huge chunk of land. And I saw the comment that with the limited expansion, we'll still be able to meet our growth targets for numbers, but I'm sure there is a number of that we're reduced because of the expansion that we are going to try to get, or reduction of the expansion that we're trying to get, whatever. My suggestion is that we've been trying to work with the county, another department of the government, to expand our UGA, and we've been continually told no. And then we have another department of the government saying, we're taking away your urban growth area, we're turning it into riparian area. It seems like to me that the next time we apply for an expansion of our UGA, we should take the numbers and say to the county and say, hey, look, Fish and Wildlife has taken away this amount of land, and it has taken away this many number of people that can come into the city, this amount of territory or land area that we're giving up for riparian area. We at least deserve to get that additional amount of territory or land expanded in our UGA. That's just a thought on my area. I don't know, do you have a comment about that?
No, and I appreciate that perspective, and it is something, it has an impact on development potential, and it can be hard to really quantify it, especially with smaller lots that are now eligible for duplexes, which then can be zero lot line subdivided. It's hard to come up with a specific number as far as the number of units. So we had to make some assumptions. We had our intern Cameron, Proud Lake Stevens resident, helped us with a lot of that back in the fall and got some really good information from that. And Yeah, it's something that, was a major reason why we kind of went with the alternative approach and tried to, there's basically the best available science showed that you can get 95% of your ecological function by establishing a 100-foot buffer. So from that, we took, well, you need to balance that. What's the benefit of adding another 125-foot buffer if it's only going to add another 5% of ecological function when the Growth Management Act doesn't just cover critical areas, it covers housing, it covers land use, it covers transportation, all these things, all of these conflicting priorities. So that factored in. I think that the science was pretty set as far as that you really needed that at least that 100 feet. So that was kind of the baseline. And so both our baseline and our proposed standard for the for the seasonal and perennial streams were at that 100 feet as opposed to trying to bump that up any farther. And I think, I think Fish and Wildlife, we've kind of had some initial discussions and they obviously would prefer more because they're looking at it just from the lens of, fish protection and, fish habitat. And I totally get that. But there are other agencies that understand that as well, including the Department of Commerce, having just gone through the comp plan update, and that cities had difficult times like meeting their growth targets, required some rezones and all of that. And so for us, on the single family side, we had such a large surplus of single family residential capacity. And that's, where a lot of these streams are. And so, we could potentially lose a couple hundred units of single family residential capacity, and we still have a 1,500 unit surplus. If it were to adversely impact the multifamily residential, there's a couple areas on 99th that, potentially would have an impact, but, we've done the math and kind of shown that we can still meet our growth targets because, it's the push and pull, the tugging of the Growth Management Act is like you start bumping up your stream buffers and it brings you out of compliance with your growth targets, then you got to open back up your comp plan. That's
why I'm suggesting that we pit the Fish and Wildlife against Commerce and say, hey, look, you guys have put us in this bad position, and or at least get the Fish and Wildlife on our side to say, hey, look, we need to get more urban growth area.
And I think that's why Fish and Wildlife, I mean, I think, not beating up on Fish and Wildlife, I think that's why they have allowed for this alternative analysis. And if you can demonstrate through your best available science that a 100-foot buffer is enough, that they would have preferred to have the, 238-foot buffer for a seasonal stream down off of Stitch Lake. But it's like, that's not really feasible when we also have these growth targets and when the best available science shows that you can get almost all of that ecological and habitat function at 100 feet instead of 238 feet.
Well, that's my comments and questions. But what the rest of you?
I was just going to ask if you could restate your comment. At 100 feet, you get 85%.
About 95%
90.
is what the best available science shows when it comes to like pollutant removal and general habitat function, both on the, on the plant side of things and then on the animal side of things. So.
Gotcha. And then that's where you came up with 100 feet for the tree.
So the 100 feet is a kind of a more standard, traditional 100-foot buffer from the edge of the stream, whereas the kind of what Fish and Wildlife has been proposing is essentially to create, instead of like a delineated stream and then a buffer that extends beyond that, you're essentially creating what's called like a riparian management zone, where it kind of just encompasses this much larger area. And so we're proposing the more traditional approach based on the alternative analysis done as part of our best available science review that shows that 100-foot buffer accomplishes almost all of the same as what this larger riparian management zone does, but it also allows us to, balance with all these other competing priorities better than having these huge RMZs.
Thanks.
Anybody else?
I only have one quick comment, and it's not even a question. I'll be curious to see how this marries with what is being proposed for the Hartford Industrial. That is an area that has critical areas surrounding it. We flood often, and the use of the buildings that is there have been entirely taken over by one industry. So I'm going to be very curious to see how that's going to be married.
Great, thank you.
This is Amy Lewandowski. I do have one more question, I
Yeah.
guess, or topic just to bring up while we're talking about the critical areas and the growth targets. And growth targets as linear versus like the rises and the plateaus. It's my assumption, or what I am seeing is like I feel like the growth target, or what we've been growing very quickly, very linearly, and I wonder like how that's going to rise more, or if it's going to start to plateau and it won't feel like we're growing so fast.
Yeah, and I mean, the growth targets are a very inexact science. I mean, they're basically, there's, a population and employment growth target that's set for the state. It's then allocated to the counties. The counties then work collaboratively within, their local jurisdictions, work with the counties. So here it's through Snohomish County Tomorrow, which has membership from all the member cities, as well as staff from Snohomish County. And so, to be honest, I mean, we historically have outperformed our growth targets. We had all of this, the last 15 years, we had a bunch of greenfield development. And so, all of the smart builders that acquired things during the recession and then came out of that, and between, 2012 and 2015, and especially the south side of the city kind of fundamentally changed just because subdivisions popped up everywhere. We're starting to see less of that. We're more and more reliant on duplexes and townhomes just because we do not have those large swaths of greenfield development anymore. But the growth targets are revisited as part of each comprehensive plan periodic update. Cities are required to report to the Department of Commerce as far as how many units they're developing. And historically, cities like Everett have kind of underperformed just because there still has been a market preference for detached single family residential. And that was available in places like, Lake Stevens and Marysville and some of the North County areas and East County areas that maybe didn't exist in Linwood or Bothell, or Edmonds or Everett. And so it's kind of something that we need to revisit, and it's something that we factor in as far as, when we made a request to expand our UGA way back in, that was like 2020, even though it was for the 2024 for the county comprehensive plan, we basically had to submit our UGA request almost 4 years in advance. And, they recommended basically against all of it. So it's something that we factor in. It's like, hey, we've done a great job. We've adopted all of these infill housing regulations. We've done all of these things, and we're still, having growing pains. And so that is then factored into some of our requests to expand the UGA in kind of smart ways, like let us go a little bit above 92 or let us go a little bit down SR9. I mean, these are areas that are generally already urban or at least suburban in nature. And so we factor all of those things in, and kind of long story short, the growth targets are not exact, and they're going to be changing, and we just need to document our efforts.
Gotcha. Thank you.
It's Commissioner Connor Davis. I just pulled up the article, Everett Herald, that I read before we moved here in 2018. It's from 2015, and at the time, Lake Stevens was planning for 39,340 people by 2035. Obviously, we're what 42,000-ish right now. So. To put it simply, that keeps getting pushed and pushed and pushed.
Yeah, and I mean, that incorporates our UGA, but even incorporating the UGA, and we've annexed most of that since, that number, including the UGA, used to be 39, then it was in the low 40s, then it was in the mid 40s, and now it's in kind of the low 50s, because just our city proper is up in the high 40s now as far as the growth target. And so, it's gone up, and it's as the city and as the state continues to attract more and more people, it has to be distributed. And, these are all discussions, and the city has shown an ability to accommodate that growth, and there's still going to be growing pains, but it's happening all throughout the state. And it's just something that, especially when we're dealing with things like critical areas and shorelines and all of that, there's a whole bunch of layers of information that we just have to drop on top of each other. And it makes it, interesting to plan. So.
Can I add just one thing? This is Commissioner Jennifer Davis. This is a thought I've had many times over the years, which is the term target. It sounds like a goal. And
Yeah.
I wish that the term was quota or requirement, because I think
Requirement.
sometimes the public hears us talk about our growth targets as if we're, you know, really hopeful that we'll.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, I think it detracts a little bit from
Yeah.
the very careful planning that goes on with the staff and with the work that we do in the city council too. Because that word, I'm sure at the state level, they love that word. They're like, great, everybody, you've got your target, go do it. But from our perspective, we're more like trying to, you know, do it in a thoughtful way. So I always think target is such a strange term of art for this, but.
That has been
Agreed.
discussion at the county level for as long as I've been doing planning. It's no issue because everybody doesn't like that term.
We've heard from everyone except for Commissioner Sauls. Any questions or comments about this section?
Commissioner Sauls, no, not at this point. I'm just doing a lot of listening and learning. Thank you.
Okay, great. All right, well, there's no action for this required, so we look forward to seeing more progress on this in the early spring, as you said. And given that, we will continue on to the joint meeting discussion. Director Wright.
Okay, this is Director Wright for the record. So I just wanted to chat with the commission a little bit tonight about your thoughts on the joint meeting. Last year, we took an approach where all of the commissioners had submitted some comments and really looking for robust dialogue. This year, I don't know that that would work as well with the major change to the city council. And you have a couple of new faces on the planning commission as well, and a couple of folks on the planning commission that are only a couple of years in. So my proposal would be to do a training session that would benefit both the planning commission and the city council and really set you on the same trajectory with the same sort of knowledge base. So what I propose is going over some planning 101, you know, why do we do comprehensive plans? What are the impact of the development regulations that come out of those? What are the roles and responsibilities of both groups? Planning commission being that down in the trenches advisory group, and the city council is the legislative authority that, you know, has the final call and budgetary kind of say in these things. So anyway, that's my thought. And I wanted to get some feedback from the planning commission. And I have put together a draft slideshow already that really covers all of those topics broadly. So anyway, just wanted to hear from the planning commission on your thoughts, or if there's anything else you would like to include. Commissioner Huxford, you have thoughts, I can see it. And so does Commissioner Dewar as I'm looking at my peripheral vision. So who wants to go
As
first?
the microphones swing around. I like that approach. I think it would be very helpful because we have a lot of new faces. I think one thing that would be very helpful, not only for the commissioners and the new council members, but also the public to hear, would be what is the limitations of the authority of both council and commission. One of the things I hear a lot is, you know, why are we getting another one of these type of stores? Why can't we have that type of store? And, you know, it's beyond the purview of either body. So I think it would be really good for the public, at least, if not us, to understand that restriction.
Not another teriyaki place.
That's exactly, yeah.
You know,
Yeah, another taco
I got
shop. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have the power of zoning. Yeah.
An abomination.
Yeah. I mean, the power of zoning is one thing. The ability to select who goes into that zone is another.
Yeah, that is just the comment that I was going to say. There's a huge misconception, and I think there were some members of the city council lost their seats because of that misconception. And so, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
But the one thing that I would add, this is Commissioner Connor Davis, is there have been times, particularly around the city-owned property off of, oh my gosh, by the Target, it's in Chapel Hill. Thank you, where that was under like the cloak of darkness being auctioned off. And we had a pretty vociferous, not even debate. We were unanimous in kind of like and appalled at how that was being handled. And the city was, the council goes on to the council, and the council just continues to move forward with it. That there is for the current council to understand, like for me at least, I still have like a little bit of scar tissue from that one. That was a tough, that was really challenging to know where the community stood, where the commission stood, and where the council clearly was so far off the reservation from where everybody else was. For them to understand that history of lack of communication and being on the same page that the planning commission has been with the council, and I would say with the city is the populace has been on with the council as well.
And I would say with that particular example, that is actually a good one of making a distinction between the roles of the planning commission
Yes. Yeah.
and the city council, where that is a city council, purely city council discretionary action, even though the planning commission may have opinions.
Right.
But yeah, so that's another example of clearly people understanding the roles and why those decisions are made and acted upon by different
Sure.
parties.
Yeah.
Commissioner Huxford, you had a comment that you.
Well, since I keep getting called out on this, I don't know how this can be addressed, but I have been now called out, which became public record because the person that did it, for cronyism, in some decisions that were made. I also watched the last city council meeting where there was some decorum, checks during that. And we always come in as sort of the little sister of city council. And yet I have long since thought that our discussions are more robust, that we're much more respectful, that we delve into things further than some have and can. And right now, especially, I would personally ask, because I love a good training, but I would personally ask that we come in as not an also ran, that we come in as side by side, and that perhaps they defer, they don't have to take our decisions. That's not our role. Roles are roles. But there's some experience here that I think they could learn from and that they sorely need, if I could be so bold, and that I refuse to be sitting in a training with people that are going to make me feel bad for being there.
Okay. Appreciate that perspective.
So did I hear you right that maybe some of this has to do with what's the name of the where we talked about the what's it called, the four types of I forget the acronym. It's the four types of, like, the shelters,
The step housing.
the step housing, the step discussion. We went over that for many hours and months, and then the city council says no. And I think we should maybe confront that up front, because that was a point of contention between the two of us, and it's for us to just brush it over. Maybe do you think that would be valid to discuss?
I think
No.
you've lost most of the people that
Oh, yeah.
changed the direction
Well,
of that
Okay.
discussion.
Well, then we could
So-
at least establish that as a
It's a case study.
as a case study. Yes.
Yeah.
Of
So I'm still hearing
Yeah.
we talk about roles a
Yeah.
lot in
Yes.
different ways from everyone.
I would just say that, this definitely is not unique to Lake Stevens. I've worked in a number of different cities, and there's always differing opinions. And yeah, when it comes down to it, the council has that legislative role and gets to adopt by ordinance, and they can tweak the recommendations. And unfortunately, that's just the reality.
Yeah.
We know what amazing work you guys do and how much effort you put into your thing. So we can understand where that would be frustrating. I think it would be productive to have those conversations.
And I think, we can absolutely provide context that the planning commission does do the hard work, and you debate these. You send staff out to bring you examples from other jurisdictions to do further research so you can really understand it. So I think that's absolutely valid to bring up the work that you and the pride you put in the product that you send along. So happy to have that in the slide deck.
Thank you.
This is Amy Lewandowski. In my observation for sitting in the audience at city council meetings and having witnessed these interactions, because I don't know the rules and such, is an opportunity for us to ever make those citizen comments, to talk directly to council for 3 minutes about the work that's being done? Or is it is the work being done here translated by the city officials?
Do anything you want as a citizen.
Sure.
That's really the role of your liaison, is to carry forward the flavor of
Mm-hmm.
these discussions. But if there are things you're passionate about,
Okay.
Who's
probably
notably
to
not
attend
here.
as a public, as a citizen, and make your comments as appropriate.
Sure. And our liaison is Ryan.
Ryan Donahue, yeah.
Is he
I mean,
online?
He has
He
his-
is.
Yes, I'm here.
There he
This
is. Okay.
I would disclose that you are a planning commissioner, that you're a seated planning
Mhm.
commissioner, but I would absolutely, I
feel like,
many times.
yeah, I feel like that would be very valuable. Or I can look back and say, if one of y'all had the microphone for 3 minutes, that would have been very interesting and impactful. Or I wonder if it would have been. That's my comment.
I believe in the past, there have been at times statements or joint statements made with mixed results, that we were not speaking on behalf of the planning commission, but that several planning commissioners felt a particular way on a topic.
Mm.
And like any public comment, that can be done with any number of ways.
Sure.
Any other thoughts about the joint meeting for next week, right? Do we have a schedule of when that is again?
I'm sorry. say
It's
that.
next, the meeting's next week, right?
Correct, the 27th.
Okay,
And it will be towards the beginning of the meeting.
okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right. So, we'll now go on to commissioner reports. Let's start with Commissioner Huxford.
I have a good one this week. I am very pleased to announce that for the first time ever, my husband and I are sponsoring a scholarship for a Lake Stevens High School senior. It is called the Huxford Work Investing in Skilled Trades Scholarship. And we are awarding monies towards someone or someones that have a plan to get certified as an apprentice or in a trade. And we are looking forward to supporting that. So very exciting. We went through the Lake Stevens Education Foundation. It has been accepted and presented at both here in Snow Isle. And we can't wait to review and pick our recipients. I know.
All right. Oh, let me step back and just clarify for those new to the commission. The commissioner's report time is where we do a roundtable and where everyone gets a chance to either bring up an issue that's not on the agenda, or to talk about things that are related or have questions or concerns related to planning commission business. So just to let you know.
Thanks.
Jennifer Davis.
I have two things. One, I wanted to mention that this is a kudos to the city. I live over on the west side of Seattle, and I ran to Jay's Market, crossed Highway 9, and then came along the lower road, not the one by the high school, but anyway, I did not die because there is a dedicated pedestrian bike area now that I don't remember from years ago when I tried to do it. And so that was so exciting to me to be able to make it from the west side of Lake Stevens into downtown on foot.
Okay, so you said you ran
Yeah.
West Seattle
Did I?
to Jay's.
did.
and
I
am
was like,
I am just like,
to-
dude, you are amazing.
I meant west side
Okay,
of Lake Stevens.
west
Yeah,
side
no,
of
not
Lake
West Seattle.
Stevens.
That'd
He
be-
started last week.
Yes, I was gonna say.
I would
wow.
definitely die if I did that.
Right.
Wow.
But my point with that was that for years we've talked about being able to traverse the
Mhm.
lake, and it was so exciting to be able to make it 5 miles without being
Yeah.
by car.
Congratulations.
And the second thing was, I just wanted to welcome Commissioner Sauls and Commissioner Lewandowski. We're so excited to have you with us and
Thanks.
looking forward to the year.
Thank you. Excellent.
Commissioner Sauls.
Obviously, I have no report, first meeting, but again, thank you everybody for having me here. I look forward to working with fellow commissioners, city council, and with city staff. So thank you very much.
Connor Davis.
Yeah, the only thing is, I've several of my neighbors. Everybody's just wondering what's going on 20th Street here with this has been going on for 18, 19 months now. The work on the pump station, if there's any update at all possible on what's going on with that. It was supposed to be done sometime like last year. I think it was only supposed to be a few months. And separately, when it comes to the crosswalks downtown, I mentioned this a million times. They did get repainted and now they are not visible once again. And I take a group of kids from North Lake Middle School out a couple days a week, and that is like playing Frogger. I think that as a city, it would go a long way for us to have some kind of education around how, like, that citizens, like pedestrians, have the right of way. It's really challenging, especially going with a group of 11, 12, 13-year-old kids, and they are they're scared to cross the street and they can see how distracted people are. Further, if there's work that we can do with Snohomish County to connect the Centennial Trail and 16th Street to have a crosswalk that gets us over to Lake Stevens Community Park to truly connect these these conduits of recreation. That's another area where, particularly when it gets to 4:15, 4:30 on a during the weekday, this time of year, it's getting to that, it's starting to get dark out. So that would be awesome for the city to take that on, to communicate with the county, because I'm sure that is all county, their purview. But otherwise, family and I, we love coming down. We're super excited about the project here downtown. We'll be there for the ribbon cutting on the 27th. Appreciate it.
Great. Amy Lewandowski. I'm new and I keep talking a lot. Sorry. I wrote this down like last week, actually, for the thing I wanted to bring up. And it's really interesting that it's very similar to what the Davises are saying. I wrote down how non-drivers navigate around the lake, and whether that's a map to kind of help show folks, like, what was your route? How did you do it safely? And how, and where is Community Park, and where some people don't know where North Cove Park is and such. And I don't know if the Parks and Rec Department is doing this already, but just highlighting these outdoor open spaces, these rec areas, and then maybe, how do we get from places to place safely? I think it would be really helpful for our community. And I think that there are routes and there are a lot of open spaces to utilize, and we need to talk about them and promote them and use them.
Great. Commissioner Dewar.
Wanted to just extend a welcome to our two new commissioners. The strength of this board is in the discourse that we have together. We all come from different walks of life, different experiences, and us bringing those together and having conversations allows us to put the best possible plans forward for Lake Stevens. And welcome to you. I'm glad you're here. Also, congratulations to our new president, President Morton.
Okay.
That's all I've got.
I think
Chair.
I'm not president. I will be a benevolent dictator.
I'll fit you for a sash and get you some sunglasses.
There you go.
Welcome aboard.
Great. Okay. So for me, I came across an article I've never been to this website before, but it's called governmenttechnology.com. And it talks about Honolulu is among cities bringing AI to planning and permitting. This is probably something that you've already known about, but I'm just bring it up just in case you haven't. So it basically talks about how the city of Honolulu and also Bellevue and Louisville, Kentucky have just begun adopting these AI platforms that do pre-screening of permit applications. And they've found that it greatly reduces the back and forth with applicants and reduces the workload and most importantly, shortens the permit time. And I know that you've done a lot to shorten the time that it takes to get permits. But I was wondering if you were aware of this. One of the platforms is called civcheck.ai, and the other one is called govstream.ai. And so just wonder if you had thought, you don't have to talk about it, but just thought I'd bring it up.
Great.
And so that is all. So now the next is Director's report.
Okay, I had a couple of scheduled reports. It looks like one of them, at least the text part, didn't make it into your packet, but before that, I will address some of the questions posed tonight. What's going on 20th Street? That's a Lake Stevens Sewer District project. They've run into lots of construction issues along the way, poor soils. I believe some of the contractors out there. So they've just had a slew of problems with that construction, and I can't give you an anticipated completion date. Do you have any more details on that?
I don't, but I can certainly find out and we can report back at the next meeting.
Great. As far as walkways, use Citizens Connect. If you have issues that need corrected, submit a work order. And that's the best way to bring that to attention. Otherwise, we have an annual pavement preservation program that includes a striping program. And so that is part of Public Works' annual work program. As to your question about resources, we do have on our website a list of maps of all parks. We have our Parks and Trails plan that I would assume is on our website. So we do have a lot of these resources. It's just finding them a lot of the time,
Okay.
But a lot of them are out there. As to your comment on AI, that's something the mayor's very interested in, and I've been researching for a couple of years, and we're doing some baby steps using some AI in some of our work product. And that's definitely on my list, and the mayor's wish list is to identify an appropriate AI platform to use as like a chat bot or pre-screen for the permitting world. So that is something we're looking at, and hopefully that's an investment we can bring forward in 2027.
Russ, could I ask a quick question? Just piggybacking off of Commissioner Lewandowski's question. So I just pulled up the park locations, the map. I'm going to Fort Collins in a few months.
Mhm.
One of the first things that I do is I go and I look up the trails and bike trails. I want to figure out, okay, do I need to even rent a car when I go to this place?
Sure.
And because I know that I can get a bike and I can get everywhere that I need to go. And it shows me where bike paths are. It shows me where, standalone, these are dedicated bike paths, where it's going to be shared, et cetera. That I'm assuming is probably maybe closer to what Commissioner Lewandowski is referring to. Where are sidewalks that people can use? Are there bike paths? I don't know that there are bike paths you said there was?
There are. And so again, that's in our trails plan. And there's also a PED plan. So Parks has put out a trails master plan, and Public Works has published a pedestrian plan. And I can't tell you what the full content of those documents are, but I know they clearly show linkages and locations of a variety of active transportation facilities.
Okay.
Just interesting being like the end user, right? And I know Connor Davis is quite savvy, and you're having a little, so it's a little bit challenging. Yeah.
Sure. Okay, and then on to a couple of other reports. As was mentioned earlier, The city has awarded a contract to build the museum and retail building. It's going to be known as Mill Spur Yard. And we're super excited about that project. I've been working on that for a couple of years. And we are going to have a groundbreaking next Tuesday at 3 p.m. So then there's a rendering of what the museum building will look like. So we're super excited and wanted to bring that to the Planning Commission because there are at least two of you that were here through the planning process of downtown and really contributed to that vision. And having a cornerstone building down here was always part of one of the 5 big things we wanted to get out of the downtown plan. And that's like number 5. So we've pretty much accomplished all of the big goals that came out of that plan that were a city initiated improvements. So pretty exciting stuff.
Awesome.
And you also can go out there and see the banners that was also envisioned with the beautification plan and the build out of Main Street, another project from that plan. So the next report I have for you tonight.
Russ, are you able to possibly speak to the occupants of the building?
We don't have tenants lined up yet.
No tenants are lined up. Okay.
And I think we're going to have nails down below and teriyaki up above.
You heard it here first.
Yeah, no. Actually, it's a Trader Joe's. Don't believe anything I've said in the last 1 minute. Yes. Okay.
Strike that from the record.
Strike that from the record. As I see everybody's Twitter account,
It's on YouTube now.
Okay, so just the last thing I wanted to touch base on, just for the good of the entire commission, before we went, after we went through the selection process for the new commissioners, Commissioner Huxford had sort of asked, do we have a training program? What does that look like? And answer was, yes, we do. And I just wanted to share with the entire commission what the information is that we bring forward to the new commissioners. So again, it's a sort of a refresher for you. So I won't go over all of that, but that is what the training session that we had with Commissioner Sauls and Lewandowski. And again, just for the rest of the board, it's there as a refresher. Again, the roles, responsibilities, crash course on some of the different laws that we adhere to, Open Public Meetings Act, legislative priority or parliamentary procedures. So just all of those basic things we do. And there's sort of a summary graphic created by AI, plugged in the report and said, can you spit out a graphic? And it did.
There you go.
So there you go. That's all I wanted to say about that.
Excellent.
Any questions for me this evening?
Seeing none, I think that we are through our agenda. If there is anyone who would like to make a motion to adjourn, that would be great. Do we have a second? Second. Thank you. We are, let's see, we vote. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we are adjourned.